Okay, we are on record now. Okay, once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to Depo and Donald. Okay, yesterday we had completed up to what we are seeing now, reporting and communication. So, initially we understood what is an audit and why an audit, the four objectives of an audit, then how an auditor gets their powers from, that is audit charter, engagement letter, how the planning for the resources and the audit areas to be audited are planned, long-term plan, short-term plans, risk-based audit plan, the control environment, preventive, detective, and corrective controls. Then again, the business process areas to be reviewed. And apart from that, when it comes to execution, that is, we yesterday started with understanding how to execute an audit like a project, then the audit programs, scope, objectives, working papers, fraud. Then apart from that, evidence collection, then computer assisted auditing tech, of course, very important sampling methodologies, compliance and substantive testing. Then again, the computer, the evidence collections and the data analytics when it comes to computer assisted auditing techniques. And finally, everything, whatever we did is for this, that is reporting and communication. Just a moment, please. Somebody has not muted their mic. Yeah, let me mute all the mics. Okay. So if any of you have not muted your mic, I request all of you to please ensure that your mics are muted. Thank you. Okay. So our auditor's credibility or the auditor's efficiency and effectiveness is reflected in the report and the communication the auditor is going to have with the stakeholders. Okay, now let us look at what ISACA says about the reporting and communication. I'm sure, I'm really hope that all of you have gone through the ITAP documents and please don't wait more time and don't procrastinate. I know that everybody is busy, but it's very, very important. You have to go through that ITAP document. If you haven't, please go through immediately. So next, that is reporting and communication. So once you have completed an audit, once you have the data, once you have analyzed it, once you have gathered the evidences, once you formulated your opinion, it has to be communicated. That is communication of the results. So you know that auditors are looked at as somebody who can never make a mistake. So you should live up to that particular, let us say, tag. So whenever you complete an audit, the first and foremost thing is to have a draft report prepared and discuss with the auditing management. This is what we call the exit interview. So what the auditor should do, have a draft report prepared and present the facts to the, let us say, the management. Why we have to do that? See, there's no secret in that. Like we are all in a democratic environment. So we are going to tell the auditee, hey guys, these are the observations we have done. And let us know, is there any factual errors in it? It is possible that an auditor may miss out something or there could be some errors in the observations. So this way, our auditor is able to present it to them and the auditor may come out, hey auditor, this area you I think is shaken. This is not the way it should be seen. And you can always correct yourself before it goes to the audit committee or the senior management. So ensure that the facts presented in the report are correct. At the same time, ensure that the recommendations, 1 minute, okay, no issues. Okay, no issues, Venkat. Okay, now next is that ensure that the recommendations are realistic and cost effective. See, we all know that audits are very powerful, and that doesn't give you the power to write anything that comes up when you're told to as a recommendation. See, any recommendation of any issues observed by you as an auditor, you need to put up on a, let us say, what is say the thumb rule or litmus test. Usually it is said like that, even though it's not mentioned in the review manual, but it is always said that when you write a comment, after finishing it, just imagine for a second, if the roles are reversed, that is, you wrote a comment and immediately you're asked to take up the position where you have to implement a comment. Will you be able to do that? That is the question you need to ask. If you can do that, then write the comment. Otherwise, don't write that comment. So you cannot write everything and anything under the sun as a comment. So that is realistic. And at the same time, the cost effective. And please understand that an auditor is not a jack of or master of everything. So if you don't know something, there's nothing wrong about it. You're not an expert in every area. So seek recommendations. You can tell very clearly to the manager, audit management, hey guys, I have identified this issue over here and I have scratched my head and couldn't come out with a proper recommendation. Do you have any suggestions? That's very good because the auditor is asking the auditee, there is a weakness, let us solve together. And the auditee will be more than willing to come out with a solution because they are the subject matter experts. And when they present a solution and when the auditor is okay with that, believe me, that is the first ever comment that be implemented by the auditee because he owns it, because he recommends that. So that way it is a what we can say win-win situation for the auditee as well as the auditor. And most importantly, whenever recommendations are made, there should be a agreed dates for implementation. You should have a very clear calendar date. So in the beginning of the class, what I told you, everybody, you have to commit a date for me to write the examination. Prior to that, you should commit. I said 25th October or 30th October. Let us put that way. Similarly, whenever recommendations are made, you should ensure that the client is agreeing on a timeline very clearly. They should not say next quarter, first quarter, next week, third week of the fourth quarter. Clear date 31st October 2021 or 30th November 2021. There has to be a very clear calendar date as a target date for completion of the recommended, let us say, remedial measures, if it is accepted by the management. Second, the high risk, because we are going to see that in the latest part of this particular class, that every risk, every recommendation will be categorized as per the severity. The high risk areas are categorized as red comments. The medium risk comments will be usually like an amber, and the low risk will be a green one, like a traffic signal only. So usually the high risk ones are very serious in nature. May not be that serious that has to be immediately communicated, but the next level. So they need to be remediated in a reasonably short time. So when there's a red comments out there, if the client says that I will implement in 3 months, it's not acceptable. You should be realistic. A realistic thumb rule is that any red comment, the remediation day should not be more than a month from the date of the report. So that is the way it should be done. And apart from that, the auditor can also present the results of an audit in an executive summary or a visual presentation. See, the stakeholders of the report are the people, that is the audit committee chairman or the audit committee, the senior management and the audit management themselves. If any other agencies or legal enforcement agencies are involved, maybe they're also part of the stakeholder community. But when you look at the audit committee or the, let us say, the senior management, you don't have to present the entire report as it is. You have to just present the key points, maybe red and amber comments, and saying that like these are the high risk areas, and you can always ask them to, if they want, they can get more details, but this is what it is. So before communicating the results of the audit to the senior management, the auditor also should discuss the findings with the key process owners within the department itself, because they are the ones who are going to implement the recommendations which will be made by you. So get a consensus on that. So it is like at the end, when you're presenting it, everybody are in sync. So the report discussion will be smoother. So the IS auditor should feel free to communicate issues or concerns with the senior management or the audit committee. So when during a course of an audit, an auditor identifies that there is some kind of a fraud or some serious violations do happen, and the auditor, in his opinion, his or her opinion, feels that it may be if they immediately is not reported to the senior management or the audit committee, the organization may suffer heavy losses. He should immediately communicate. He should not wait for the audit to complete. You get questions in the examination to this effect. That is why I'm emphasizing it. If a fraud or a serious issues are identified, stop everything, straight away make a small report and send it across to the senior management or audit committee immediately. The communication can be any way, verbal, oral, written, or maybe let us say using the media like WhatsApp or whatever it is, but the issue has to be communicated. What is the objective of the report? Number one, just formally present the audit result to the auditee. That is, you are formally telling them that, hey guys, we reviewed your area and in our opinion, this is what the control efficiency in your area of operations is all about. And it also serves as the formal portion of the audit engagement. So we know about it. There should be a start date and there should be an end date. and the report presentation is the end date for an audit. And at the same time, the auditors need to provide statements of assurance if required, identification of areas requiring corrective actions and related recommendations. And it also serves as a valued reference for any party researching on the audit or audit topic. Mainly the information security or the risk management will be very much interested in the audit report. Why? Because an information security person would have implemented a control, and whether the controls are working fine or not, an auditor will independently verify. So the audit is if you have seen that how thorough the auditors will do their audit. And because of the thoroughness involved in the process of an audit, they provide the best results. So anybody who want to research on a subject for control efficiency and all they have to look at an audit report. And they also serve as the basis for the follow-up audit if the audit findings are presented. If there is a recommendation and the dates of where the recommendation has to be implemented will be the due date for you to visit those areas and to see whether those areas, those things are implemented. At the same time, they also promote the audit credibility. That is, if well written and well presented, the auditor's credibility will increase the organization. So one thing you should understand is that like earlier days when we were all learning our lessons in audit in 1980s and 90s, audit is not usually seen like this. Audit is usually seen like some kind of a fault finding machine only. But over a period of a time, the audit nature has changed. Now the auditor is also supposed to add value. So nowadays, what happens is that like audit is seen as an enabler rather than putting a smoke on the wheel. So in this case, the audit test is well justified in even praising something going good. So audit need not be always criticizing somebody. If you come across anything which is done really well, you can always compliment them, comment them about it. I can ensure that others also do the same thing. So the audit reports present the IS auditor's findings and recommendations to the management. They are the end product of the IS audit. So they need not be, let us say, they should be balanced, describing not only the negative issues in terms of the findings, but also the positive, constructive comments regarding the improving processes and controls or effective controls already in place. Nothing wrong in it. So every audit report should have a bare minimum structure. See, it depends upon the audit, the consultancy firms like a Big Fours or maybe the various organizations, internal audit departments. They may have their own structure, but at a bare minimum, the following bullet points will be necessary to have in a report. These are the main content that should be there, whatever may be the format. First and foremost, an introduction to the report, clearly citing why that area will be taken for an audit. Usually, that will be the result of the risk-based auditing, and the auditor would say that, like, based on the risk analysis, this area has to be a high-risk area, so he has taken up, and the objective of the audits. And any limitations the auditor faced during the course of an audit and the scope that overall, let us say, the boundaries with which the auditor operated, and also the period of audit coverage and the general statement on the procedures conducted. How whatever you did, like you have done evidence of the collected in these areas, then soft evidence as a collected of these servers, be currently this, those kind of things, maybe around 7-8 lines. And processes examined during the audit, followed by the statement on the IS audit methodology and guidelines. You don't have to worry about it. You can just Google about let us say, for a statement on this, in the sense like you can Google and for a template and audit report, you'll get a lot of from the Institute of Internal Auditors websites. Apart from this introduction, the audit findings, usually they are grouped in sections by materiality. So this is the materiality which I said when you talked about red, amber, or let us say green. Red comments are very serious comments, amber are medium level comments, and green are low level comments. And these are on that way or an intended recipient. Usually, most of the auditors will give on the basis of the severity only. And next is the IS auditor's overall conclusion and the opinion on the adequacy of the controls and the procedures. So many organizations have a many way of reading. So auditors are very, very finicky and they will not ever praise you. If everything is fine, it's say the audit is found to be satisfactory. This is the best ever comment you can get from the auditors, satisfactory. Good, very good, excellent will never be there at all. Not even there as a qualification. So if everything goes fine, satisfactory. Then if anything is not there, for example, you have a scope limitation, there are some areas where the auditee did not even allow you to audit an area, then you can very clearly limit, qualify your own report, say that yes, I am not able to, so I will not be able to present an opinion. Usually, any qualification by an auditor or any reservation will be viewed very, very, very seriously by the senior management of the audit committee. The management will be taken for task because an auditor represents the board of directors of the senior management. If an auditor asks for an information, if the management doesn't provide it, that means they are refusing the information to the senior management and audit committee. That is the construction, or that's what is going to be construed. So usually the qualified audit report is very, very, very rare. At the same time, the potential risk identified and the consequence of a detected deficiencies. And the detailed audit findings and recommendations that will be given to the auditing management for them to remediate, and a variety of findings, some of them which may be quite material, while the others are minor in nature, again for remediation purposes, will be submitted to the department as such. Then next is the documentation. The audit documentation provides the necessary evidence that support the audit findings. So that is what when we develop the audit programs, then audit working papers, etc. Okay, just a moment, please. Yeah, okay. So the audit documentation provides the necessary evidence that support the audit findings and conclusions, the audit programs, the working papers, the analysis, what you've done, the scratchings, all the scribblings, whatever you did, everything represents an audit working paper. They are all part of your audit documentation. And they should be clear and they should be complete and easily retrievable. That is a very important thing. They should be easily retrievable. And usually they are the property of the auditing entity and should be accessible only to the authorized person. Only the audit staff who are part of that audit should be actually accessing that. And all audit documentation should be dated. Every paper, whatever you're going to write, should be containing the data of the day you written actually. Then initial, the person who does that audit staff and the supervisor, page number, self-contained. Each and every comment should have all the related evidences, documentations, opinions, scratchings, or whatever it is should be put together. It's called self-contained. And they should be properly labeled. So for easy retrieval and identification. And sometimes they may contain very confidential or very highly confidential information. So they should be kept in custody. So audit documentation should include at a minimum a record of the following, that is the planning and preparation of the audit scope and objective. So initially when you started with the risk analysis and where you are going to analyze the step-by-step activity and identify the controls, it starts from there. And from there, how you identify the scope, then the objectives. And description and or the walkthrough on the scope audit area. So how did you actually arrive at the audit area? Then the audit program, what we saw yesterday. The audit steps performed and audit evidences gathered. That is each and every activity. Yesterday, when I was discussing about it, I told you that each and every step, even including when you do a formula, write a formula, calculate it, every step has to be written down. That is what it is. Then use of evidences of other auditors and experts. If you have appointed a third party like a pen tester or any vulnerability scanning tools or etc., that should be also mentioned over here. And their report also should be part of your documentation. Then the audit findings, the conclusions and the recommendation, usually a copy of the report in this case, and the audit documentation related to the documentation identified and this. It is an index of the index, metadata we call it. So once the report is presented to the senior management completed, the auditor doesn't stop there. The follow-up activities actually happen after that. So audit, if you look at it, is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop at any point in time. So it is the IS auditor's responsibility to ensure that the management has taken appropriate corrective actions. So a follow-up program should be implemented to manage the follow-up activities. So when the follow-up occurs depends upon the criticality of the audit findings. This is very, very important. There is a live question exactly asking for this. That is the fourth bullet point. When the follow-up should depends upon the criticality of the audit finding. So when later, maybe couple of days later, couple of weeks later, when I ask a question, you should not blink. It's very clear. There are some questions. When actually there's a question, you will be very, very rare to find a direct question like this in the examination. So there is a live question which is very, very clear. When the follow-up occurs, depends upon the criticality of the findings. And the results of the follow should be communicated to the appropriate levels of the management audit committee or the, let us say, the senior management, etc. That's the question.
Is it B?
B for ball.
Yeah, B for ball.
Exactly. Should be backed by sufficient and appropriate audit evidences. Yes. Next question.
C for cat.
C. C.
Okay. Anybody can.
B
Whoever
for
said
ball.
B for ball, C for cat. Okay, C for cat. Whoever said it, can you explain?
Yes, sir. So the auditor can only tell the finding, right? He can't take the action after that. It's the owner of the control who needs to take the action.
See, if you look at, there's a shared user account. Okay. What do you mean by shared user account? There's a generic ID where whoever uses it, you will not know unless there is a separate process for it. There's no mention about it here. So that means it's not there. So if a generic user ID is used and there's no way by which you can identify who used a particular ID at what point in time, it's going to be a merry-go-round, finger pointing. So one person will say other person used it, nobody will know, and finally you are not going to have a clarity. So that means the auditor should be very clearly explaining this to the management and document it, and I mean explain the rest to the user shared ID. So C is the right answer. You should understand why you are selecting the right answer. Next question.
A.
Okay.
A for apple.
Anybody else? Ladies from your side, any comments?
A.
A for apple is the right answer. Perfect. Publish a report based on the available information, highlighting the potential security weakness and requirement for the follow-up audit for testing. That's a perfect answer. Great. Another question.
C.
C. That's correct.
The primary objective of performing a post-incident review. So why I know this question has come slightly early, it should have come after the fourth domain because the incident response comes in the fourth domain only. But every one of you are expert. I mean, you know about the auditing, DRP, BCP, all blah blah related things. Now, when you do the post-implementation review, why you want to do that?
A.
Improve the internal controls.
Absolutely right. Because an incident happened because some control failed somewhere. So the root cause analysis is going to be performed to see what went wrong and try to fix the control. That is the primary objective. Other things will be coming later only. The primary objective is to improve the control so that doesn't happen again. So A is the right answer. Next is your quality assurance and
The
improvement of audit process.
C will be the secondary part. The first will be improve internal. Then we highlight the importance of incident response.
Highlighting importance of incident response doesn't come as an answer at all, because if the management doesn't know the importance of the incident response, the department won't exist.
So what is the correct answer?
A,
I said it. Improve internal control procedure.
that's right, yes. So next is your quality assurance and improvement of audit process. Now let us look at the control self-assessment. Anybody in this group is doing a CIA, Certified Internal Auditor course? Repo, you are, by any chance you are looking at it? Okay, why I'm asking is that I'm going to give a small, let us say, this thing about, in the sense like a small talk about the auditing, internal auditing techniques. See, if you look at the second part of the late 90s, that is after 95, the auditing, the internal auditing, the way the internal auditing being done went on a very big change. We can say a paradigm shift. And this happened because of the efforts of many organizations. Like the organizations like the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, AAA, American Accountants Association, then the IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, then AICFE, American Institute of Certified Fraud Examiners, then ISACA, Information Systems and Audit and Control Association. So like that, there are many organizations put together, they formed a committee. This committee is this organization called the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. And they appointed a committee which was headed by a gentleman called Treadway. A committee or a commission, it's called the Treadway Commission. Under the chairmanship, the stewardship of the Treadway, this commission went into the internal audit practices in the past, and looking at the IT and various other things, they have actually recommended a model of an internal control. This model is known as COSO, COSO model. I don't know how many of you heard about this COSO model. This is the nowadays the accepted model when it comes to the information and the internal control. It is a big model actually. There are so many things are there. There's something called a kind of a house, first line of defense, second line, and various other activities. The model is quite big, but we are not going to look at the entire model. It is not our subject. It is the CIA. Actually, if you have done CIA, that is what I ask people. That is the subject of that. So let us not get into this. This COSO model clearly says that when it comes to internal controls, there are 3 lines of defense. They call 3 lines of defense. If you just allow me, I will try to open one slide. I'll show you. Just allow me to stop the sharing for the time being, because I do have a slide which clearly gives you what is the 3 lines of defense. This is not from our, let us say, CISA, but it's from CIRIS actually. The latest one contains that. I just want to show that. It's a beautifully done slide. So I thought I will show you that. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
So this is what we call the 3 lines of defense. It is part of your series examination right now. The latest series exam, the latest syllabus contains this. So if you look at, these are the 3 lines of defenses. The first line of the defense, who is responsible for the control? That is the management by themselves, and the internal control measures that is taken in the organizations. That is the people who do the operations. Those people who are in charge of this operation, they should have their own controls. That is the first line of defense. The second line of defense is the financial controls, your information security, your risk management, your quality assurance and quality control, you can say. Then you can say inspection, compliance. Sometimes this is also called the GRC, governance, risk management, and compliance function. This is called the second line of defense. And then the third line of defense is internal audit. It could be independent internal audit. Internal audit, or sometimes also external audit also could be there. So this is how the three lines of defense. This is exactly what we can say is the post-war model. I just wanted to show that this because you will have a very good understanding of what actually it says. So apart from that, who are the governing, the senior management is coming in all the three lines, and the governing body, the audit does internal audit, they directly report to the senior management and the governing body. They don't report to anybody. Apart from that, you have external regulators, then external audit also there. This is how the complete lines, three lines of your controls are going to be in an organization. Okay, so you all understand what it is here? Okay, now let us stop the share, go back to the subject. Why I have to explain, I'll tell you what now. Okay, now can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this now you can see that the first line of defense is done by the operations themselves. That is the management or the operations. And second is your GRC, or let us say controls, or maybe let us say quality functions, or whatever it can say. The risk, information security, risk management, everything comes under the second line of defense. Third line is your independent internal audit. Now, the control self-assessment talks about the first line of defense. You need to understand where it is actually coming from. Rather, it is the assessment of the control made by the staff themselves. Now, when you want to assess the control, assume that you are in charge of an area in a operations. Now, the auditor comes and says that, hey, you have to assess your control. Then you should not blink what is supposed to mean. That means you should understand what you should review. That means you should understand, number one, what is a control means. The question is that why the control exists? Because there is a risk that need to be mitigated. And why the risk has to be mitigated? Because there is an objective, organization objective that has to be achieved. Because the organization objective may be impaired if the risk is not. We saw that in the risk management, the risk has to be reduced. The primary way to do is the control. So when the control has to be self-assessed by the, let us say, the staff, they should understand the risk, they should understand the organization objectives. Without understanding this, but even the control self-assessment made by the staff will not be very effective. Why? Because it is an activity which is done as a mechanical one, not understanding the reality behind it. So we can say that means the management technique for reinforcing the internal controls. So ensuring clearly that everybody who is supposed to be in charge or involved in an operation understand within their areas what are the risks involved and how that risk is going to have an impact on the organization objectives, and what kind of a controls are put in place, and what is their duty in monitoring the risk of the control, so that this can be achieved. This can be achieved. So that means the staff, every single person in an organization who are involved in the operational activity also should be made aware of the risk actually going to impact their area. So that is a risk awareness technique. At the same time, it is a method by which the business objectives, the risk, and the internal controls are reviewed and communicated to the staff at every level. I mean, you're not going to give the company profit etc. to everybody. Their level, whatever is required, you're going to calculate to them. That means what happens, every single person knows in their area of operation what are the risks involved and how it's going to personally affect them. That is another important thing, because you have to clearly tell them that if anything happens, they are going to have an impact according for themselves. They should be very clear about it. What are the advantages of the control self-assessment?
Srini, one doubt here. So
Yeah,
when
please.
we talk about assessments or audit, we first see of the independence factor. But if we are doing self-assessment, so
Yeah.
is that not lost for the?
No, it's the primary responsibility they are doing. It's their job, they are doing it. It's a control self-assessment. You are assessing your own control. What is wrong in it?
No, like I might be biased, right? Even if
Yeah,
my
you will
control
be-
is failing,
you
I
will-
can give it as
You
first.
will be definitely biased. There's no doubt about it. But we are not talking about that in this case. What we are talking about is that, like, that is what I said. When you give the clear idea, what is the risk in this area, their area, what is the risk that's going to be mitigated, how is going to affect them, the bias will go away. For example, a person is handling a very critical area and there's a control and this guy doesn't monitor it and sleeps on it. If the risk happens and because of that organism, some major impact is going to happen, he's going to lose his own job. Plus, not only his, maybe many of his colleagues. And that is very good to clearly say, it's going to affect him personally. When you put that personal touch, everyone will be online. Their bias will go away because they know because of their action, they may lose their jobs and the company may also get collapsed. So that is why bias will never be avoided. Don't worry about it. We are not looking at that here. We are looking at the control, the evaluation, see whether present or not and working or not. We are not asking them to implement a control. That is where the bias is very important.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Srini Venkat here.
Yes,
When we
Venkat.
have to establish this CSA, whether at the time of interview or the
Control
When you
self-assessment should be a
start-
continuous process. Anytime you want, if you have not done it, the high time you should do it in your organization. It has to be done like it has to be part and parcel of your audit. Like even when you start your internal audit department, the control self-assessment also should be done. There's nothing called this is a right time or auspicious time to start it.
it is from the business process side, right? Not from
Yeah,
the
they
audit.
have, no, it's not from audit side. It's for the business process side. They should have it. That is what I showed you the picture, the 3 levels of control. We
Yeah.
are in the 3rd level we are talking about. The 1st and 2nd level is the responsibility of the management only, right?
Correct.
That is why I took pain to show you that particular slide. Otherwise, you will not understand.
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, what are the benefits when you talk about a control self-assessment? First thing is early detection of the risk. Before we saw the continuous auditing, we also know that like the auditors used to visit an area maybe after a long time. So during that time, intervening period, if there is any fraud committed and the perpetrator ran away, at the end, even discovering a fraud is not going to help the organization because the lost money is lost. So, but in this case, the control self-assessment, everybody are watching on a continuous basis. So it's very difficult to do a kind of a fraud. So the early detection of a risk, number 1. More effective and improved internal controls. Why? Because the employees are motivated. They know personally how a risk in their area can operate themselves, affect them personally. So they are more motivated enough to look at a better controls. And creation of a cohesive teams through the employee involvement. You should understand controls is not something that you like a Harry Potter's magic wand. You just show the wand, everything will go away. It's not that way. The controls, sometimes you may need a combination of a controls to even reduce a risk to an acceptable level. We call them layering the controls. In that case, the controls may have to be exercised by more than one person. So there has to be a team. So that means the controls, if they have to be effective, there has to be a cohesive teams. So a teamwork is encouraged over here. And development of a sense of ownership of the controls in the employees and the process owners. They know that this is the activity I'm doing and this activity has this issue and there is a control put in place and that is the control that is actually saving the day for me and I should own it and should do it properly. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my job and the organization is going to go back. So that way, what happens is that the ownership will be there and whenever the controls need to be strengthened, when it has to be changed or modified, there won't be any resistance because they know the reality and they know the requirement for that. You'll be surprised many a times that changes may be requested even from the employees themselves. They say that this is changing, we need to have changing it. That is the level we are looking at when we have a proper control self-assessment being done. Then increased employee awareness of organization objectives and knowledge of the risk and internal controls. See, traditionally, it has always been some kind of a curse that internal control is the prerogative of the auditors, the risk is the prerogative of the management, and the risk practitioners, and everybody else is supposed to do their job. Now, they don't understand that everybody, whatever they do, everybody's job has a risk in it, and they should understand that. And whenever the controls are put in place, the business process owners and all the people, they feel it is like some kind of a spoke in the wheel, try to reduce the operations. But when you clearly educate them, hey guys, it is your own problem that I are trying to help you out, but it's not my problem. And that means when you are clearly showing them that how their activities are going to add or going to have create a problem for the organization objectives, and the controls are how they are going to put up and how they are going to save the day for them. And that is where there are going to be increase in awareness of the objectives and let us say risk and the control, so that there's a very clear cohesiveness. Yes, they understand why their job is also important. Then increase communication between the operations and the top management. This is always a contention, a bone of contention. The communication. See, if you look at most of the organizations are pyramid shaped. In the sense, the CEO on the top side and the operations on the bottom side. Usually the communications are one-sided, that is the policies and standards or directives that comes from the senior management. And the communication is complete when the sender gets an acknowledgement from the receiver that they understood. Unless the communication is not complete. In this case, what happens? The senior management send their directives, whether the directives have been followed, whether the objectives are achieved, you should get a feedback, right? So the communication is like this. From the top, you can say this is just CXO level, this is the, let us say, HOD levels, the middle management level, and your operations level. Here, this is the last one is the operations level. So at the operations level, the directives actually come from the top to the bottom here. Sorry, my pen is not working, some issues. But at the same time, the feedback mechanism, the metrics, if you are not given properly to the senior management will not know whether their activities, their directives, their policies are effective or not. So always that need to be considered in mind. So when the control self-assessment is done properly, the operations also understand the requirement for the information to be given to the senior management, and there's going to be an improved communication between the operations level and the senior management level. The bottom to the top communication is extremely important. This is what we call the feedback mechanism. And highly motivated employees, because they know how their job is going to contribute to the organization objectives, and improved audit ratings, because everybody are now control oriented. So the rating will be very high. The auditor will not be able to find out any control weaknesses are very minimal only. And the auditor can reduce, it is not going to eliminate, but auditor can reduce his number of checkings, etc., because he knows the controls are strong in every area. So reduction in the control cost. And assurance provided to the stakeholders and the customers that everything is okay in an organization. And one of the contention always the management has is that whether the organization or the activities in the organization has complied with the relevant laws and regulations. And this way, when your laws and compliance with the laws and regulations is also considered as one of the risks. That means when the risk is managed, there's a level of comfort among the senior management that yes, the various laws and regulations, etc., are complied with in timely manner. Then at the same time, there are some disadvantages associated with the control self-assessment also. Let us see that. Sometimes the management may look at the success of the CSA and say that we don't want internal audit, which is absolutely wrong. That is why I have to show you the 3 lines of defense. The management may tend to confuse the first line of defense with the third line of defense, and it could be mistaken as an audit function replacement. It is not. And it may be regarded as an additional workload. Sometimes if the employees are not motivated and they do not understand the requirement properly, they may find it like additional metrics has to be filed, and they will do it in a more mechanical manner rather than trying to understand the risk and the control and the reasons behind it. And any improvement suggestions by the staff not taken up by the senior management may cause a kind of heartburn for the employee. There may be a right reason, because the employee is looking at a granular or a ground level, whereas the management will be looking at a bird's eye view, and they may find a compensatory controls elsewhere. So they may not accept or may not act on the suggestions. But The employee may not understand it. So this could cause a kind of a heartburn and they may lose interest. And some employees, whatever you do, they may never get motivated. So lack of motivation may limit the effectiveness in the detection of the weak controls. So the idea of this self-assessment, control self-assessment is that early detection of the risk and ensuring that control is always preventive and a good kind of, let us say, a safeguard present in an organization. So if it is done mechanically, it's not going to have an impact on the organization. So in this, what is the role of an auditor? The auditor has to be extremely careful in this. It is a functional role. It is not an audit role. But an auditor can actually facilitate this role by providing a kind of a consultancy in this. Okay, so to be effective on this facility in the facilitative or innovative role, the IS auditor must understand the business process being assessed. So first and foremost, an auditor should have a thorough grip on the business process and understand how the control works and tell or teach the audit staff, that is the people who are doing the job, and how the control has to be evaluated, how the risk has to be understood, and how the control has to be understood. So it is important to remember that IS audit is a facilitator and the management client is the participant. So you need to facilitate it like a workshops, like providing guidance and like troubleshooting the problems, etc. So an IS auditor will lead and guide the auditees. So we will guide them and lead them. We will never do the job in assisting their environment, in assessing their environment by providing insight about the objectives of the control based on the risk assessment. So they will give an insight into how the risk assessment is done, how the controls are identified, and how the controls are implemented, and the controls are tested. So this is how what auditor will do in case of a control self-assessment. He will never do the job. He will help them to do that. This is, I said, is the last slide, which is an integrated auditing. See, if you look at traditionally, I'm talking about the early late 90s and until the Sarbanes-Oxley happened, Enron happened. Usually the audit is always treated in silos. There will be a HR audit, there will be a HIPAA audit, there will be a PCI DSS audit, there will be an ISO audit, there will be an external audit, there will be an internal audit, there will be an IT audit, there will be an administrative audit, there is an operations audit. Many audits will happen. They have their own objectives. Who is the poor chap? The auditing client. So at the end of the day, what happens is that the activities are same, but the inferences are different. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why can't we put everything together and do one audit, and whatever you want to take it for your own inferences, you take it away? And that is possible because nowadays, most of them are almost everything is automated. So an IS audit can play a lead role in evaluating the control along with working with your operations and financials or other areas. So that what happens is that like you have one full integrated auditing done and every stakeholder can take whatever they want. And finally, the IS audit to ensure that the IT related controls are in place. The advantage is that you are not going to repeat audit many times. The same process done many times for different purposes. It's done only one time and different inferences are made depending upon the outlook of the people. And this integrated audit is also sometimes called the GRC, the Governance, Risk Management and Compliance Function. This mainly happened post Sarbanes-Oxley because the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance requirements are pretty steep, very, very difficult. So if you have going to have the silos of let us say various audits, then I'm going to help you. So that is where the integration happened, and that's stuck actually. That is called your integrated auditing. Next questions for you.
Development of risk assessment.
Anybody else?
Development of risk assessment.
Development of the risk assessment. Yeah, there is a right answer. That is the first thing when the auditor does is understand the risk so that he can identify the scope, identify the objectives. Then he can develop an audit program. Then where the key information owners are. Review the audit charter is not at all required. Once the audit charter is signed, it has to be filed somewhere and to be forgotten. Next.
What is the answer?
Yes. Answer I told you, right?
Hey,
D for Delta.
Development of the risk assessment.
Yes. Next question.
B for boat.
B. Cats.
B.
B. Somebody said cats. C. So what is the answer? What is the consensus among yourself? What do you feel is the right answer?
B for what?
B.
Yeah. What do you do when you want to detect a duplicate invoice records in an invoice master file? Put everything in an Excel sheet, then try to put a formula to see any duplicate is existing or not. Very simply, it's called a computer assisted auditing techniques. Very simple. This is a very easy question.
Srini, what was the fourth option? What is that? Integrated test facility.
Yeah, we saw that in the when we completed that CAATs, etc. We start SCARF, EAM, audit books, then snapshots. Then also saw the integrated test facility, right? Usually,
Yes, yes, yes.
this ITFR used as a tool to check the integrity of the particular business process. From the beginning to the end, whether the data flow is done properly and all the data transfers is done as per the expected way and the output is as per the expected result only. So auditor will set up the dummy entities within the database and either dummy entities or the real transactions are processed through the dummy transaction also and to see the results are compared with the original results. If both are matching, that is the integrity of the process is correct. And that is what the integrated test facilities are. It is integrated within the organization application itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have successfully completed the first domain. So let me stop the tear and start with the second domain. So welcome to the second domain, which is the governance and management of IT. Okay. Now let us look at the what are the various contents of that, and after that I'll ask all my questions. So if you look at this is the second domain, and weightage wise it is only 17%, but importance wise it's extremely important. And it is sometimes you have to understand the nuances within the particular domain, because there is always a possibility that you can confuse what is a governance as a management and what is management as a governance. There is a very thin dividing line between the governance and management, but there is a very clear line. You should understand that. And that is why we are going to see this particular domain more detailed manner. So what are the topics that we are going to cover in this domain? When it comes to the governance part, we are going to look at the governance and strategy when it comes to IT and IT related frameworks. Then we are going to talk about the IT standards, the policies and procedures. Then organization structure. Then we are going to look at IT enterprise architecture. And of course, we are going to look at the risk management. Then we are going to look at the maturity models like a CMMI, and also we are going to look at the laws, regulations and industry standards that may be having an impact on the organization. All this is a governance responsibility. So when it comes to the management, it is the resource management, then service provider acquiring and management, again a resource management only, then performance monitoring and reporting to see whether IT is performing as expected and the results are reported back to the senior management, and of course the quality assurance and quality management of IT. These are the topics that we are going to cover in this particular domain. Okay, now let us understand. Now my favorite subject. Next half hour until we finish the classes, I'm sure we are not going to move an inch away from this slide. Not at all we are going to move, because my questions are going to be like that. Gentlemen, can anyone tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what is the difference between the governance and what is the difference? What is the governance and what is management? Can anyone tell me? Or shall we? Let us put this simply. What is governance? Rohan, you are not supposed to answer.
Sure, Srini.
Now, what is governance? I don't want silence. Say something. Even if you don't know, so whatever your understanding is, there's nothing wrong in guessing.
Okay, can I say something?
Sorry,
Can I say something?
I didn't get you.
IT
What is
governance and its strategy.
now? What I'm asking is that what do you mean by governance? I want an explanation, a definition for
Governance, the
governance.
rules.
Governance is the provider of direction or alignment to the business strategies model.
Okay, what is that?
Governance means the rules of
Mhm.
operation.
Rules
the
of
rules-
operations. Okay,
Yeah, the
fine.
rules that the IT has to follow and
Okay,
the strategy that is necessary to apply.
okay. I'm
Well-
not asking about a strategy. Forget IT, forget strategy,
That's the
everything.
governor, IT governance.
No, I'm not even asking IT
Adhering to
governance.
something.
I'm
Is it
asking only
adhering
thing.
to something?
I'm asking what is governance. Forget
Okay,
all these
governance.
things.
Rules.
Is it adhering to
Controls.
something?
Adherence to something. Okay, who said that? Sorry, I didn't see. Okay, okay, Vandana, to certain extent, you're right, Vandana. Adherence to something.
Managing.
Okay.
It is
Managing.
controlling the
Then why do
controlling the
you have?
organization.
When you say managing, then why the governance is there? Governance and management are two different things.
Just to check, whatever we have put into effect, they are in
Operational
control.
rules.
Okay.
Are the
Now,
effect of
Governance
the
means
controls.
whether the things are being followed as it is desired to be.
okay, let us look at this way. Imagine an organization, a corporate setup. So who are the persons representing the corporate setup? That is the board of directors. Am I right?
Yes.
The board of directors and sometimes the senior management also is identified as a company, right? Now, who are the stakeholders of this organization? A stakeholder means anybody who is having an interest in the organization,
Yeah.
anybody who is having the expectations from the organization, and anybody who is affected by the activities of the organization can be termed as a stakeholders. So, for the stakeholders, please, I don't want silence. We are running out of time. Let me start with, for your sake. The first most important stakeholders are your investors.
Process owners or investors?
The investors are the first, because without the investors, you cannot start even a company. The shareholders, okay. Then anybody else? Who are the stakeholders?
Employees are
Suppliers.
stakeholders.
Employees, okay. Employees, okay. Then
Suppliers.
Process
Vendors,
owners?
suppliers.
Vendors.
suppliers, vendors.
Vendors.
So vendors are suppliers. Suppliers, vendors are same only. Same group. Even third-party service providers, everything comes under the particular group. Anybody else?
Customers.
Clients.
Most important stakeholder is your customer. Without a customer, can he even survive in the market? Apart from that, who else will be involved?
Your process owners?
Process owners are,
Management.
that is the organization here. You are not looking at that.
Government bodies, regulators.
Exists government bodies, regulators, exactly. Perfect. Anybody else is there?
Competitors.
Auditors.
Competitors.
The society at
Society.
large. It's called a corporate social responsibility.
Correct. CSR.
So you are not supposed to. The competitors are not your your stakeholder. They're competitors. They are not part of your job. So if you look at, okay, this is the stakeholders. Now, let us come to governance again. Now, if you look at a state of Arizona, a state of Texas, a state of New York, or the Indian government, or the United States government, we are not talking about the government or governance. Why are we not saying them? They are managing them. Now, the Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India. He is governing the country. Why are we not saying that he is managing the country? And Joe Biden is the President of the United States of America. They call him the POTUS, the President of the United States of America. Now, why is he governing the country? Why is he not managing the country? Have you ever thought about it?
Because for management, we have different groups.
No,
Day-to-day activities are being managed by somebody
no.
else.
High
Okay.
level,
Okay.
high level.
Okay, let us take the country. Let us say, let us say, imagine a city. Okay, I'm just any city, for example, X, Y, Z city or the state. State of Arizona, state of, let us say, Tamil Nadu, where I belong, etc. Now, this particular state will be having, let us say, they used to be the citizens. Then residents. Residents are the people who are living there, may not be the citizens. Now, the governing body, that is the chief minister or the governor in case of United States, they have to ensure that everybody, every citizen in the state is fairly treated as per the constitution. Right? That means whatever action taken by the body, the governing body, should take care of the everybody, regardless of the caste, regardless of the color of the skin, regardless of the, let us say, the birth of origin, regardless of the gender, regardless of anything, every human beings are equal, at least in paper. And we are not getting into the politics of racism and nothing, forgive me for that. Just the governance is that you under the law, under the constitution, I'm sure about both in, I would at least to certain extent studied both the constitution. I know that both United States and India, they guarantee the basic equal rights to each and every citizen or the resident within the country, as long as that particular citizen or a resident is law abiding. Very simple. What we are trying to talk here, we are ensuring that the stakeholders, the citizens' interests are taken care. Sometimes the government spends money in welfare activities, non-value added activities. And that is not a management. Managing means trying to make profit. Sometimes when you try to make a profit, you may stamp on the rights of somebody. That is the reason why you need a body which is called the board of directors that should take care of everybody's interest. Left to the management, they will only please these guys and try to suppress these guys, never pay these guys, and violate this all the government rules and try to make higher profit. And this body is present there to ensure that this doesn't happen. That is called the governing body. Understood, all of you?
Yes, Srini.
So there is a very clear line. The board of directors are the ones who are going to determine the objectives of an organization. So what is an organization objectives? We saw that in the beginning when we discussed in the first domain. I also gave you the difference between the goal and objective, right? What is a goal? What is an objective? Objective is that something that you should achieve by some deadline. For example, in year end 31. So this objective is usually, or not usually, always. I request all of you to please mute your mic, respective mics, please. So the board of directors are the ones who determine the objectives of an organization. So when you talk about objectives, there is a COVID 2019 actually gives you a process by which this particular, let us say, objective is set up. That is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Evaluate the needs of the stakeholders. What they want, what they want, what they want, what they want, what they want. So usually how this process is done? By a budgeting process. If you ever looked at a budgeting process in an organization, the first and foremost, they will look at where my revenues are going to come from. The sales. That is my customers first. I'm going to increase my revenue by getting to another market. So I have a complete revenue. So in order to ensure that my revenue service, I need to supply. I need supply. So I need to ensure that my suppliers are supplying the quality products. So there is going to be a tussle over here because the customer would like to have a high quality product at a very cheap price because otherwise they will go away from you. At the same time, supplier would like to also, he is also in the business to make profit. So he's trying to increase the price for you. Now you have to negotiate and bring the price down. This is an issue here. There is going to be a conflict. Now the investors, our friend, the people who invested the money, they want higher dividends. If you pay the higher dividends, you will not have money left for paying the employees. And you need to ensure the employees are happy because they are the ones, the soldiers who ensure that this is under. There is another confusion over here. At the same time, the governing bodies, government is sitting and watching you. Have you paid the poll taxes properly? And society is watching. They don't do this kind of things. So what happens finally? There is a jigsaw. So the board of directors looks at each and every process and carefully and sets an objective, evaluate the needs of the stakeholders and determine and agreed upon. That is the budgeting process. Objective. For example, the previous year profit for an organization, let us say X. Now we are doing the budgeting process for the year 2022. Right now we are into August. So September is going to come. So every organization will start their process now. So the current year, your expected profit is X, that is 2021. And the year 2022, by this process, finally you agree that is going to be X plus, let us say, 25%. This is an imaginary number I'm going to put, does it? So this is what we are going to discuss in the future now. That means the board says that, tell the senior management, hey guys, you need to ensure that 25% increase in the profitability should be achieved. Plus maybe other objectives also maybe there, like increase in the product share, market share, revenue, all those things may be there, but this is the primary one. And this becomes objective. Then direct the CXO, that is the senior management or the executive management. Why they are called executive management? Because they are going to execute these objectives. Direct the management to ensure that the X plus 25 is achieved and monitor the process to see whether this is done in a proper manner, that is legal regulations, etc. This is where you're having the risk management, the GRC functions, and also the internal audit. This is the process called EDDM, evaluate, determine, direct, and monitor. Using this process, an objective is set. Okay. Now, this is the X plus 25 is the organization objective. You should not forget this. Okay. All of you are okay with that? You all understand the process here? There's nothing, there's no complications over here. These are very simple things. Any doubts in this? Because this is going to be the basis for our discussion for the entire chapter here. This is what actually I'm giving you is not in the review manual. I had learned it in a very hard way so that I'm teaching you properly so that you will have a clarity. So you understand any doubts, please ask right away. Okay, silence means everybody have perfectly understood, hopefully.
Okay, Shane. If something comes up, definitely we'll go for
Thank you.
any question.
So now the X plus 25 is the objective, right? Now, where we are right now? X. So that means the senior management, the executive management is tasked with ensuring that by the year end, we are going from X to X plus 25. Then what does that require? How do you think that senior management is going to achieve this? By sitting at the chair and daydreaming, they are going to achieve this?
Go for the management part.
This is what management is supposed to do. That is what I said. This is to be done by the executive management, the CXO level, which is headed by the CEO, CIO, CTO, COO, CFO. That is why that middle one I'm putting the X here. Whatever one you want to put it there. It's a placeholder. Then who do you think they are going to achieve this?
Through
What do you require? What do you require?
more down the line, like managers, supervisors, and all those.
Yeah, that is an organization structure. That is operations. But what do you need first? Don't you think you need a plan?
Yeah, a plan, a strategy or something.
Exactly. That is the word I was looking at. We need a strategy. Am I right or wrong, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Yeah,
This
right.
is called the organization strategy. So you also should remember this. Whenever, hereafter, wherever you go, until you call it a day that I'm going to retire from my life, until that time, whenever when somebody is saying this is what our current state is, and this is what the desired future state, because this is the current state and this is the desired future state. When these two things comes up, immediately what should come in your mind? A strategy. So currently you are not certified information systems auditors. By 31st of October, every one of you are going to become a CISS. But just sitting on your couches and dreaming about it, you are going to achieve that? No. What you're doing, you have a strategy very clear. You're taking my classes, you are paying my fees, you are paying for the examination, you are allocating the time. I'm talking about the money, the time and the budget, everything together. Then you are allocating time, short term, long term. You're going to put your efforts to pass the exam, pay the ISACA's fees, write the exam and pass the exam. Various activities are involved, right? There is a plan involved, right? In short, there is a small strategy involved, right? If you don't have the strategy, do you think you would have come to me for classes? So there is a strategy. You don't know that you had a strategy, but that is a strategy. So whenever there is a current state, what you are right now, what you would like to be, these two questions are asked. Immediately, the next step is a strategy development. Now, this is called your organization strategy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, even if you have the strategy, is automatically everything is going to form in line? No. That means you need to have something called, according to again COVID, is called the PBRM, plan, according to whatever the strategies, build activities to support the strategy, run those activities and monitor to see whether they are on the right track or you need to course correct it. So the PBRM process, again COVID. So that means a CXO, that is the senior management, executive management level will utilize the people. That is CIO, that is for IT. That is CFO, that is for finance. Chief Marketing Officer for sales. Chief Production Officer for purchases, inventory, whatever it is. Then legal officer, that is legal counsel for legal, HR director. Like that you may have internal audit or whatever it is. These are the senior management people who will assist the CEO to hear the CEO to ensure that this is taken care. And each one of them will be having their own activities like this. This is what the organization structure is all about. So using the organization structure and the processes within that, the CEO will run this plan and the strategy and ensure that this particular organization objective is achieved. And while doing so, you are going to ensure that each and every department is going to be taken. This is what we are going to do, the CIO, the IT strategy. That is what we are going to look at over here. Now the governance we are talking about. The governance is the senior management's responsibility or the board's responsibility. Whose responsibility is governance? At what level the governance should exist? Can anyone tell me?
Sorry.
At what levels in an organization hierarchy the governance should be practiced?
Operations level.
I think
at every level in an
Top
organization,
level.
governance has to be exercised. In
Top
short,
level.
at every level, the governance is required. Without governance is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Because governance is asking some few very, very pointed questions. My number one question is that, am I doing the right thing? That is, whatever I'm doing is helping my strategy. Am I doing them the right way? That is legal. At the same time, then am I getting them done well? Am I doing the proper job well? That is efficiency. And after doing all these things, am I getting the results? That is effectiveness. Governance is answering these four questions. This is your governing yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing them the right way? Are we getting them done well? Are we getting the benefits? This is the questions that has to be answered when you talk about the governing bodies. Now the governance of that. Now the governance in an organization is nothing but setting an objective a goal setting process, and with that you are setting up the process to you are setting the ball rolling and ensuring that number one, strategic alignment happens. That is, every activity in an organization is aligned towards the organization strategy, that is the Express 25. And while doing so, you are ensuring that the hiccups or the hindrances or roadblocks, we call them risks, are taken care. At the same time, we are not stamping on somebody's authority, that is legal, regulatory, and compliance requirements are taken care. But while doing so, we need to also get a profit. That means we have to utilize the assets in an organization. And these are the assets they have to perform to achieve the desired result. That is the strategy. And the performance has to be managed and the resources have to be properly utilized to see whether they are allocated properly. And finally, we need to see whether the value is generated for the business, that is objective is achieved or not. So in short, we can say the governance can be broken into two levels or higher levels. At organization highest level, we talk about this thing is called your enterprise governance. We are going to talk in a different language called EGIT or enterprise governance of IT. Just don't worry about it. We'll come to that later. 1 minute, my pen is again giving me trouble. So when you look at the highest level in the governance is your enterprise governance. That is all your entire organization is covered. It's called enterprise governance. So I told you that in order for the governance to succeed and ensuring that the organization objective is achieved, you need a strategic alignment. What do you mean by strategic alignment? Every activity you do should be contributing to the strategy. Otherwise, the activity is waste of money. Second, the risk need to be managed. Third, there should be an assurance process. That is an independent assurance that gives you that everything is rosy. That is, you're taking up the legal, regulatory, compliance requirements. And you should create value or benefit. That is your financial thing. And to do that, you need to ensure that the resource utilization, that is the PPT, people, process, technology, should be adequately utilized. And their performance has to be monitored to see whether they are performing as expected. This is the sixth thing we look at. Now let us look at two. Let's split into three. The first three, we can say strategic alignment, we say risk management, or let's say assurance process. These three, and let us put the other side, value creation or your benefit realization, then the resource utilization, and the performance monitoring, other three. This is called conformance. You're conforming some things, or a compliance, you can say. Complies to the strategy, complies to the risk management activities, complies to the assurance functions. Then this is called the performance. That is, you're creating value, or you can say business here. Then resource management, then your performance measurement. And in short, we call them this as a corporate governance, and we call this a business governance. So whether this is called a corporate governance, whether this is called a business governance, all the 6 elements has to be present properly. Only then the organization will succeed. So in order for the organization achieve its objectives, you need the corporate governance should support the business governance, and the business governance should support the corporate governance. So in short, if you look at the enterprise governance is the process of achieving the goals in the organization. So the corporate governance is like a railway track here. Sorry about it. Again, problems. 1 minute. Okay, pen is not working anyway. So the corporate governance and business governance should work in tandem. If the corporate governance is working, but the business is failing to achieve objectives, they're not done properly. Again, what will happen? You're not going to achieve the objectives. But the business is doing well, but there's no monetary mechanism, there's no risk management, no strategic alignment. Again, you're going to miss your targets. So in short, you need to have both of them. That is the corporate governance and the business governance work together in tandem to ensure that the organization objective is achieved. To do that, you have to sync, cascade, percolate, and converge all this requirement to every activity. So in this case, you need to look at IT governance and IT strategy. So what is an IT governance in this place? Now I explained to you the governance, organization governance, that is the strategy setting process, or rather let us say that like objective setting process. Now what could be the objective setting for the process for the IT? Can anyone tell me with whatever explanation I have given here?
From senior level to downwards.
No, what is the
Direct.
process? What is IT? I said organization governance. What is IT governance? Look at the particular picture over here. That means for IT, who are the stakeholders? Understand the requirement. That means what you have to do that in case of IT governance, you have to set an objective for IT, right? So IT objectives. So who will set the IT objectives? The stakeholders. You are going to see them later. No issues, don't worry. Now, once the IT objective is set up, what happens? IT current state, IT current future state. Accordingly, there should be once the objectives are set up, what happens? You have an IT strategy. Am I right or wrong?
So that will also include the risk faced by the organization.
That governance process will take care. That is what the IT risk management and IT audit, IT security, everything comes under that particular umbrella. So if you look at, this is what we can say corporate governance. This is called this is the enterprise governance. This is the corporate governance, and this is the business governance. This is conformance. This is performance. Now, when it comes to IT, where it comes under, whether it comes under business governance or comes under corporate governance?
Business governance.
Business.
Why? Because it's performing. So the IT will come here. Now, where IT security or IT, let us say security, IT control will come under?
IT control.
Yeah, it's all risk management and assurance process, IT audit and IT control. So IT security or IT security will come under corporate governance. So usually if you look at, so if you look at IT security, will control the IT when it comes to security. So this is how the organization hierarchy is actually.
TBC.
Sorry?
TBC TBC போடவா?
So Venkat, you're saying something?
Okay, bro.
No, I'm not saying.
Okay. Okay, so in this case, if you look at, the enterprise governance is broken into corporate governance and business governance, under which your IT and IT security comes in. We are going to see that in the subsequent slides. You will be easily understanding everything. Now, my question is, what is IT governance? Understanding the requirements of the stakeholders when it comes to the IT. Who are the stakeholders of IT?
நம்ம இப்படி கூட சொல்லலாம்ல, லாஸ்ட் டைம் பிளஸ் நம்ம லாஸ்ட் ரெண்டு டைம் டிக்கெட் ரைஸ் பண்ணி அது பெண்டிங்ல தானே இருக்கு. சோ அதுவும் நமக்கு இன்டகிரேட் ஆகாம.
Sorry about it. Okay, so now the question is that what is IT governance? Can anyone tell me? So nothing but IT governance is understanding the requirement of the stakeholders of IT. Who are the stakeholders of IT? Employees, that is the business. Then the external stakeholders like customers, the suppliers, regulatory bodies like PCIDSS, HIPPA, PAA, anybody, any data we are using is IT, the regulatory requirements, everything is your stakeholders. So taking care of the stakeholder requirement is the IT governance process. And to that extent, you have to set an objective for IT. And that objective of IT should always match with the organization objectives. This objective of IT should match with the organization objective. You cannot have something different from the organization objective because IT is a support division for the organization. So how you are setting up the organization objective, IT objective for organization, we are going to see the subsequent slides. I mean, when we start the process again. So once you have set that, the objectives are set, you know very, very clear what is the desired state. Then your IT strategy comes into picture, what I'm supposed to do. Then how am I going to do that? And from there, you're going to take it up all these activities, strategic alignment, IT risk management, IT assurance process, IT resource management. If you look at, that is what this one is all about. IT resource management, IT service provider acquisition, performance measurement, and reporting. All these areas are governance activity, strategy setting, you require framework, and to ensure that the governance is done, you need policies and standards and structures. You need a proper organization structure that ensures that the decisions are taken. This is again a governance job. Enterprise architecture will be giving the current state, and from there you can go to the design future state. The strategic alignment happens at this level. Enterprise risk management, how you are going to mature from the current state to the design future state. Then the laws and regulation, that is the compliance requirements, etc. You can see whatever I covered here is coming under here. 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 there. So governor 1, 2, 3 strategic alignment right in the beginning. The strategy is a strategic alignment here. Then ensuring that the risk is managed. Then again the compliance process is totally covered in this. Then risk management, resource management, then performance monitoring, reporting. So when you do this, automatically your value is created. We are going to look at how the value is creation, where we are going to look at IT balance scorecard, which will give you an idea about how IT value is created. In simple, gentlemen, this is what we are going to see. So there is a very clear dividing line between your governance and management. Do you agree now? Do you understand the subject, I mean the domain now clearly?
Yes.
This is what we are going to cover in the next Saturday session. So the clarity should be there. Now we have the bird's eye view clear for you. Then the explanations will be very easy. Otherwise, if I say something about strategy, you'll blink. Now, the moment I know strategy, you know that there is a current state and a desired state. There is a plan for that is called the strategy. And for every activity, there should be a strategy. There is a current state. There is a desired future state. Even for risk, there is a current state. There is a desired future state. Information security, there is a current state. There is a desired future state. For you, there is a current state. Today, you are not CISA. By October 31st, desired future state, you are going to be CISA. So that is why you have to understand the strategy and objectives. What exactly the organization trying to achieve, and IT strategy, IT objective is supporting the organization objectives. Accordingly, create the strategy, accordingly create the framework, accordingly create the policies and organization structure, and ensure the resources are managed, and then your performance are monitored, and finally, IT is providing the benefit to the management. This is what the entire second chapter is all about. Are we all clear now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any questions before we call it a day?
Good from my end, Shri.
Okay, so I just want you to, I will try to send the recording by tomorrow by morning, late morning. So I request all of you to at least listen once before coming to the second class, next class, whatever we covered in the second domain, because I need you to have that freshness in your mind. Otherwise, you will again grope in the dark only.
Will do, Srini.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, Sri, sure.
Okay, thank you all of you, and have a great week ahead of you. Stay safe, and we'll meet again Saturday evening 7 p.m.
Thank you, Srini.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so